Singleness can be a blessing, an amazing, awesome blessing. Though it may not always feel like that when you're going through that season and you may have a desire for a relationship. But I want you to understand that don't let your relationship status define you or discourage you or make you feel like you're not good enough. It's just that you may need to go through a process before you can get to that next stage and receive someone you can share your life with. And what you have to understand is that when it comes to God, God doesn't want you to just be with any man. He wants you to be with the man that's truly best for you. And so again, that can require a process or a waiting period that goes longer than we would hope or have expected. However, though I want you to embrace the season that you need to be in, I also want you to be aware when the mindset of waiting on God has maybe crossed an unhealthy line or crossed the line to where it's the exact reason why you're single. Not necessarily because you're supposed to be, in the sense that you couldn't have what you desire right now, but that it's essentially blocking your blessing. Okay? Now, again, I know this might sound tricky because I don't ever want you to think that the actual waiting on God is a problem. All right? But I want you to understand how maybe it can get confused with other things that is throwing off the trajectory of your life when it comes to being in a successful, healthy relationship. All right. Now, one of the big reasons, and you could also look at this as how the church keeps women single. I know that's a hot topic and I've that's been brought to my attention, and these things still apply to that discussion as well. Okay. But let's continue. Okay. So one of the big reasons why waiting on God is keeping women single is because you're essentially waiting in the wrong line. Hear me out. So I want to give a quick story. There was a woman once I met many years ago. I was speaking at a woman's house who was having this girls get together. And she had asked me to come and speak to the women and answer questions and all these things. And so while I'm there and we're all engaging, one of the women, and let me make it be known, they were all women of God. They were all believers. One of the women was like, basically, she expressed how she was over it. She was frustrated. She felt like God let her down. And I'm like, well, why? Like she felt like she can't even trust this whole waiting on God thing, right? And I'm like, well, what happened? She said, well, 10 years prior to that date, she had reached a point where she really wanted a relationship. Things weren't working out. And so she decided to give her life to God. This is how she expressed it. And by giving her life to God, she decided to go work in the church. And she submitted herself to God and sacrificed her life to be in the church 5 days a week and working hard and trying to be a great woman of God, right? Great Christian woman. And 10 years later, still no man, still no success. And so I had to ask her, like, well, did you ever ask God if you should go work in the church? Or did you decide that for yourself? And what it turned out was she decided it for herself. And so this is a great example of how sometimes we project onto our season or our process what we think we should be doing and what will get us a relationship. And you know what? It's hitting my spirit. So I got to speak on it. All right. And I don't want you to get me confused with what I'm saying here, but let's just get to it. An example of this also is some women who decide to go on a journey of celibacy, thinking that the celibacy is going to bring them a man, that their celibacy will be rewarded with a relationship. Now, again, I don't want you to confuse this with me saying you should not embrace celibacy. It's not me saying that celibacy is not a great thing, but there's a difference between you assuming that taking certain actions that, maybe looked good upon by God is what's going to bring you the result. Okay. And then what happens is if you assume that's the piece to the puzzle, you may miss out on all the other pieces you're supposed to be putting together. All right. So yeah, celibacy may be a part of it, because understand that part of a big reason of being celibate or abstinent or waiting till marriage is to eliminate the chances of clouding your judgment, developing unhealthy attachments, right? Allowing yourself to experience things with a man that is not for you and can contaminate the way that you think and perceive certain things. All right. There's a lot of downfalls that can come with it. So yeah, you may have needed that to be a part of it, but you cannot assume that that's what's going to bring you the ultimate result. So going back to that woman who decided to go to church, what I really want you to take away from this specific point that I'm making is that I really want you to focus on getting into your purpose, because your purpose will position you to receive all the things that God has for you. All right. Because with that woman, she decided to go work in the church. But what if God wanted her to go work at a hospital? What if God wanted her to go be a missionary? What if God just wanted her to be going to the gym more often? I know that sounds crazy, but I'm telling you, like, you don't know the small details that matter, that play into how you will now be able to cross paths with the individual that you can be with, as well as the path that prepares you for that individual and for the type of relationship that you desire and God would want you to have. So we can't assume, right? We have to go to God. We have to ask in prayer, and we just have to be obedient with the directions we're receiving within our spirit when we do that. Now, I know it is easier said than done when I say just go to God and pray and ask the questions and you're going to hear it. I know for a lot of people that's a foreign thing to you, right? Or you feel like, well, I've tried that and I'm not hearing anything. So a couple things I want to say to that. One, sometimes we're not hearing God because we need to draw closer to God. And so one of the great things to do is fasting, right? Fasting can help you go deeper within, connect with your spirit, gain clarity. It has been useful, or I don't know anyone that's gone on a fast that hasn't gained more clarity when they did it. I'm not saying it doesn't exist. I just haven't come across that person. And I've done fasting tons of times for that purpose, and it works every single time. Okay. The other thing to consider is that sometimes it's not that you don't hear God, is that you are not comfortable with his voice. You're not comfortable with receiving that direction within prayer. You're constantly second guessing and rationalizing and all these things. So what's going to help you in that area is by consistently practicing going to God and asking questions. And so that means in your everyday life, talk to God. God works in the very smallest of details. All right. So there's nothing you can't ask God about, and you never know what a simple decision might lead to, right? So any conflict you have, any indecision, anything that you're wavering on, stop, ask God, and listen to the answer in your spirit. Because now by practicing it in the smaller moments, it's going to be much easier for you to now engage in that practice and hear him in the bigger moments. All right. But ultimately, the goal here is to get you on your proper path, get you in your purpose, get you properly positioned so that if you're going to be waiting on God, you're waiting in the right line with him. All right. So now another huge reason why waiting on God is keeping women single is because some women aren't waiting, you're hiding. All right. Let me say that again. Some of you are not waiting, you're hiding. So, I love y'all, and I completely understand how scary it can be to put yourself out there, right? When you've already been through disappointments, you've been hurt, you're constantly hearing all kinds of stories of men being dirty dogs, manipulative, losers, bums, you name it, right? And some of you have just directly experienced that. You're hearing that not only from maybe your friends and family around you, you're seeing it online and all these horrible stories. And so, yeah, it's understandable for you to get to a point where you're jaded. It's understandable for you to get to a point where you're like, I don't know if I want to even bother with this anymore. And then so what happens to some women is that because you still want a relationship and maybe you don't want to give up hope for one, you're like, all right, cool. I'm just going to step back and I'm just going to give it to God and I'm going to let God handle. I'm going to wait on God. But again, what you're really doing is you're hiding behind God. God becomes your defense mechanism to not put yourself out there. God becomes your defense mechanism to not have to actually walk out the process that might include doing some tough work, right? And so one of those works that you may need to be doing is healing from your past. Okay. And let's be real. I talk about healing all the time, but I know that's not the easiest thing for someone to do. It can be a very scary process. It can take a lot out of you. It can be very heavy, right? But I always encourage it because I know how important it is and how life-changing it can be for you. I did a couple events over the weekend and met somebody who they said they came across my work a few years ago and it changed their life. They went through the healing process and she testified to me like, yo, that healing process not just has completely changed her, it has absolutely changed the type of men who are coming her way. All right. And don't get me wrong. You could heal. You could be an amazing woman. You might still have some bums come your way sometimes. That's just life. All right. You're going to have good and bad might want to come your way, but you will start noticing more good, plain and simple. And what's better and more important is you will have the capacity to not only better recognize it, but be able to embrace it, nurture it, and turn it into something successful. There was another woman I met at a different point over the weekend at the event. You know, you will look at watching my videos, did the work, and she was like, here's my husband. The husband was right there. She said, I'm married now because of your stuff. And it's always awesome to hear when there's these success stories or whatever. But the point is, in the journeys that these women have taken, healing was a big part of it. All right. And to heal, you can't hide. That's a tweetable quote right there. You can use it if you want. To heal, you can't hide. You have to essentially expose yourself. You have to be vulnerable in that process. And it's such an important thing. So yes, be honest with yourself when you're using God as a shield rather than a guide. And again, that sounds a little off because God is our shield. God can protect us, does protect us. But again, it's just different when we are walking in faith, trusting that God will protect us versus we are dwelling in fear, using God as this shield of us not having to move forward properly in the way that we need to. All right. So here's another big, important one. Another reason why waiting on God for a man is keeping a lot of women single, or how the church keeps a lot of women single, is you're listening more to people, not God. Okay? So in today's world, the voices have become more abundant, meaning the amount of people who are speaking on relationships, giving their opinions and their perspectives and all these things, right? Though there are good voices, and I support all good, healthy voices. I support all people who have gone to God and God has said this is the journey he wants them on, because I'm a firm believer that, listen, I can't be the only one, right? That I can't reach everybody. I can't be the coach for everybody. There's going to be more people needed to speak to the various different audiences that exist out there. So I want everyone to succeed and reach their assigned audience, so to speak, right? But with that said, I also understand there's a lot of negative voices. There's a lot of unhealthy voices. There's a lot of voices being led more by selfish intent rather than godly purpose. Okay? With that said, that leads to a lot of confusion. That leads to people making a lot of bad decisions because of what they heard from others. And forget internet voices for a second, because sometimes the bad voices is your family members, your friends, people who may be well-intentioned in the sense that they want the best for you, but they're speaking from a biased place, or they're speaking from a hurt place, an unhealed place, right? And that can lead to, again, more unhealthy behavior. So in this waiting on God, you got to remind yourself the purpose or part of this process is to get more in tune with God, right? And okay, something else is hitting my spirit. This is kind of going left for a second, but I don't know. I'm having a lot of these moments right now. So this could be added to the list, but we're just going to put it within this point. Another thing that's keeping a lot of women single while waiting on God for a man is that you still haven't learned how to not put the man before God. Okay? So we'll get back to the original point, but I had to just mention this now. And what I mean by that is this. For a lot of us, this can happen to men and women. Don't get me wrong. A lot of people, when they fall in love or they fall deeply for someone, they become so consumed with that individual, right, that they don't even realize they've put that person on a pedestal higher than God. And they're letting that person and that person's actions or lack of action dictate their behavior to them, affect them in a way that is distracting them from the things they should be doing in their life, distracting them from their purpose. I have a quote that says, there's a lot of women not walking in their purpose right now because they're holding on to a man that's dragging them down. All right. It's something to that nature. But the point is, God is not trying to set you up to be in a situation where he's going to be put second. Okay. You have to remember that no matter what, he must come first. No matter what, you have to be more afraid of losing God than you are of losing any person. Forget romantic relationship, anybody, mother, father, sister, whoever. Bottom line is we have to be very mindful of these attachments we develop with individuals, and when they basically, again, surpass the attachment we should be having to God. Okay? So now going back to the whole listening to people more than God, what happens to so many individuals is because, as I mentioned earlier, the process of praying and hearing God can be difficult. And again, it's foreign to a lot of people. So by default, it's so much easier to go speak to a friend. It's so much easier to go talk to your pastor. And even people who do hear God clearly still are going to go to some physical outlets, right? Because again, it gives a little bit more comfort because we can see, touch, hear that person audibly. Whereas listening to God requires such a strong level of faith that can be difficult. And it can be difficult depending on how difficult the situation at that moment is, right? Like it's easier to listen and hear God maybe if I'm asking myself, should I eat this donut right now? Right? Is this the right thing for me to be putting in my belly right now? Versus, should I move? Versus, should I go on this career? Versus, should I be quitting this job? Like, these bigger decisions call upon this greater fear in us of being wrong. And that in itself gets in the way of hearing God. So again, we start to rely on other individuals, but that becomes a huge mistake because sometimes it's those other individuals keeping you single. And sometimes it's misery loves company. I just felt like I had to say that. Like some people, and again, they may not be consciously trying to do it, but subconsciously, they don't want you to graduate to the next level because they haven't. And they want to keep you there with them. You know what I'm saying? Or they're giving you advice in a way that validates their shortcomings. Okay? I always say it's very unlikely for an alcoholic to get another alcoholic to be like, yo, you're drinking too much. You know what I'm saying? Because that's their struggle too. You have to find someone who's either overcome it or doesn't engage in it it'll be easier for them to tell you like, no, you're going too far. So it's the same thing, whether it be a bad attitude, whether it be unhealthy behaviors. If we're getting that input from individuals who that's their struggle too, they're going to have a harder time. Not that they can't tell us the right thing to do, but they may have a harder time with it, right? So we have to be mindful of that. But all of this at the end of the day boils down to talk to God. Let God be the loudest voice in your life, not people around you or online or anywhere else. All right, we got a couple more to go. And so another very common reason why waiting on God for a man is keeping you single is because you're waiting and not preparing. Okay? So what I mean by that is, one, understand, I never want you to wait on a man, only on God. I want to make that distinction real quick, right? Because you may have a scenario where some of you are familiar with the fact that I have videos about right man, wrong time, right? And I think that sometimes there are scenario situations where maybe the guy needs to develop a little bit more. Maybe there's some things he needs to do before you guys can come together. And though that may be very true, that doesn't mean there isn't work on your end that needs to be done. And as well as, it's not that I simply want you to focus on waiting on the man. I want you to go to God. And if God says, be patient, it ain't time yet. All right, cool. Then wait on God. Trust God in this process. But with that, you have to then ask, how do I prepare for that? Because listen, let's just be real. We can swear we're ready. We can swear we got our stuff together, and it's just this individual that's, having a problem. But there's always room for improvement. And we may not understand, though you may be a great woman as you are, though you may have done a lot of work on yourself, that doesn't mean you've prepared in a way for the specific relationship that you're going to experience. There may be very specific details or things that need to be addressed in order for you to properly embrace, nurture, and be able to thrive in that relationship when it comes. Okay. So with that said, you have to, don't look at it as I'm in a season of waiting. No, you are preparing to receive. It's gonna come, but you got to now do the work. And that starts with asking God, what is that work? But not only just asking God, don't get me wrong. Asking God is number one. But here's something, this is one part where I do want you to maybe invite some other voices, physical voices into the situation. I think it's good to get an inventory from people who know you and tell them, listen, I need you to be brutally honest. What are some things that maybe you feel like I can improve upon, right? And I think it'd be even better if you're able to ask this question to opposite sex members. So as a woman, you being able to ask a man, I think will bring forth some good perspective, if possible. Some of you may not have that option. And be willing to humble yourself and hear them out, because again, I'll give one example. I know of a woman that's coming to mind where, she's a very strong personality, very dominant personality. And she spoke about how, no one's ever told her she's not kind or nice or anything like that. And I can see how people would say she's not a mean or bad person. I agree with that. But in talking to her, it was clear to me that her energy is very attacking at times, or can be. It is strong to where it can really make someone feel a certain kind of way, right? And no one's calling that out. And with no one calling that out, she can't work on something that is going to potentially derail her in not only receiving the right relationship, but if she did receive it, in being able to nurture it, because she's not aware of how her energy is coming across. Her energy, her spirit is attacking people. And there's a lot of people that aren't in tune with that enough. Okay. So being able to ask someone of the opposite sex their perspective on things could help open your eyes to that. right? But again, it starts with talking to God, and God is the ultimate say so, final say so, all that. Don't get me wrong. But I do think this is one part where, yeah, I'd be okay with you talking to some people and seeing what they say. But ultimately, be prepared to make the necessary improvements. Again, don't view the need to make improvements as a insult to you, or like, well, are you saying I'm not good enough, or why does it mean something's got to be wrong with me? Don't look at it like that. It's not about right or wrong. It's about making sure you are equipped to have the successful relationship that you desire. And again, what you need to be equipped with may be a little bit different. I think there's some foundational things that are pretty consistent across the board, but there may be a few differences from woman to woman based off of what God knows you're going to be walking into, or what he is going to be bringing your way. All right. So be open to that and trust it will pay off. And I'll say this too, before we move on to the next point. Becoming a better woman is for you first. Like, forget the men for a second. You will be happier. You will be more at peace. You will have less stress. You will be more fulfilled, right? Like, you're gonna benefit from it. So don't even look at it as, I gotta do this for a man. No, you gotta do this for yourself, and you have to do this for the purpose of becoming the woman God created you to be. All right, now, last but not least, and keep watching to the end of this, a big reason why waiting on God for a man is keeping women single is because some of you are forgetting that a godly man is still an imperfect man. All right, where am I going with this? Some of y'all may not like this, but we're going to keep it real. All right. So I was actually just speaking to a friend earlier today, and I was saying how, you know, there are a lot of women who, as they establish their relationship with God, various levels that relationship may be, right? They may develop a perception of what a man of God is supposed to look like. All right. And for some, it might be, well, he's supposed to be worshiping like this, or he's not supposed to engage in that, or he's not this, boom, 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 boom. Right. And now when they meet a man, they can meet a great man, but if he's off the mark on something, he's not legit. He's not a real man of God, or that can't be for me. Another example I'll give, or story real quick, and I've said this, I've given this story before, some of you might be familiar with it. A different event, was asked to speak at someone's house, same thing, group of women, there to answer questions, right? And one woman pulls me to the side, and she's like one of the, you could say, head women of the church, one of the top, if not the highest ranking member, whatever you want to call it. So anyways, she's like, I want to say she may have been in her late 50s. And she's like, she wants to be married. It hasn't worked out for her. What's she supposed to do? And I'm like, so let me ask you, in all your years, you've never been proposed to? She said, no, I've been proposed to 3 times. I said, oh, okay, well, so you said no to all 3? She said, yeah. I said, why'd you say no? She said, oh, because they weren't on my level spiritually. I didn't feel like they were on a high enough level spiritually. I said, okay, did you ask God about any of these men, or did you determine that for yourself? And she said she didn't go to God. She just came to her own conclusion. And there lies the problem. It's like, we got to understand that we don't all walk the same path when it comes to our relationship with God. When I say don't walk the same path, meaning, all right, there's a great book I've referenced before about why men hate going to church. And one of the things in there was how the author found a lot of men don't like praise and worship service, right? They just want to go, get a good word, go home. Women love praise and worship. The whole service could be praise and worship, and the woman is like, that was great. I'm filled up for today, right? And it shows the difference, even though these are still 2 people of God. how they gravitate differently to receiving that spiritual nourishment, so to speak, right? And so I've been honest that yeah, I used to literally pull up to church, and while praise and worship was going on, I sit in my car. and, and once it was done, then I walked inside. Because I don't like, I'm very like low key, introverted, believe it or not. So I just feel like there's too much going on. And just so you understand, I'm like this across the board. I'm not you won't catch me at a concert. It's just too much going on. So I view it the same way, right? But that's just one example of how someone can see that and be like, oh, well, he's not serious. He's not really into God like that. And then disqualify me, so to speak, right? Now, again, there's various layers to this, there's various examples, but the point I'm trying to drive home here is like, we all have things we struggle with. And don't hear that and think, oh, you're trying to make excuses for men to be reckless or sin. No. I'm just acknowledging and highlighting the fact that every one of us have things that we struggle with. If your struggle, let's say your struggle is gossip, just an example. You engage in it, you love it, you get on these blogs, whatever. Does that struggle mean you're not serious about God? Does that struggle mean you're not a woman of God anymore? Does that struggle mean, oh, you are no longer good enough to be in a relationship with? You see where I'm going with this? Like, don't just jump to those conclusions. Again, he can be a man of God, but he's still an imperfect man. And this is why it goes back to, as God tells us, don't lean on our own understanding. Talk to God. Ask God if this is a man you should be joining with. Ask God if this thing that he does maybe differently in his worship, does that truly disqualify him or not? Let God tell you who this man really is, not you coming to your own conclusions or your friends or whoever telling you, oh, he don't do this. Nah, he's not good enough for you. That gets a lot of women in trouble, and that's what keeps a lot of them single. So again, lean on God. All right, thank you for watching this video. I pray it was helpful to you. Be sure to watch this one over here on 5 important questions to ask God when you might have found the one. You know, if there's anyone who knows what is truly best for you, it's God. And with that, he knows who the man is that is best for you as well. And though I believe most of you watching who are believers would agree,